Hello and good evening, everybody. It's another Worlds Collide Wednesday. I am your host, the Schwans27, and we're witnessing a second round matchup in our Coliseum 2 event that is currently ongoing. On the left-hand side of the screen, in the default yellow and white, we have Mark, and on the right-hand side, in that 90s throwback, my eyes are starting to bleed a little bit, neon yellow to orange fade with the white text. That is nobodywar. Both of these are wonderful runners for you this evening, and we're going to be showing off a Final Fantasy VI randomizer. So what's randomized about Worlds Collide, you may ask? Well, the items that you get both in chests and in shops are random. The characters that you start off with are random. Their commands are random. The bosses are shuffled amongst the locations that they are in the vanilla game. There's also random magic spells taught on different espers. The places that you acquire both characters and espers are all random, so it's just a big hodgepodge of how do you get through to the end of the seed. Well, the goal of a Final Fantasy VI Worlds Collide run, as you see there, is Objective A, unlock Final Kefka, and we need to recruit 6 characters and find 9 espers. We will have 3 characters to start off with, and since this is the Coliseum, we are starting with Shadow's Ninja Star. That is the flag theme for this particular round. So we're going to start with Shadow with his vanilla throw command, so something very powerful. However, there are a few different things about this flag set from a standard race that I want to go over really quickly. The first thing being Objective B, unlocking Kefka Tower Skip to skip right to the statues to start your boss gauntlet is at 12 bosses defeated, not the find 9 characters or find 12 espers. There's also several challenges with Shadow's Ninja Star. All characters get +5 vigor and +5 speed right off the rip. And since this is the Coliseum event after all, if you do win a match in the Coliseum, you get the auto image status for your entire party for the rest of the game. Very powerful stuff, as that allows you to basically nullify physical attacks. There's a couple of other things in here, including letting Sid die for a high tier item. I'm sorry. I'm completely forked the intro here. We're on a different flag set. Shadow's Ninja Star was last week. As Magre points out in the chat, yes, this is Setzers dice. So let's back up that train a little bit. We're going to start out with Setzer with his natural slots, and then we're going to get 2 other characters. So in this, we're going to have to pray to the RNGesus because there is a lot of different random things about this flag set. You do get +5 vigor and +5 stamina, and for winning Coliseum match, you get 3 high-tier items. However, that is where the known values in this speed stop. The shops are random, the chests are random scaled, and the prices are a random 0 to 64K. So we can get really high-powered items at a very low price, or we can get very high-cost consumables and anything in between. Ability scaling on bosses is also random instead of element. So we might see some bosses do some scripts to their battle that we don't normally see. Also, the boss encounters are not shuffled, they are random. So we could see repeat bosses in this particular race. Also, we can have multiple commands in this particular race for our different characters, and we're not excluding Magitech and Shock as we would be in a normal race. Our stats are also between 65% and 140% of vanilla, so lots of leeway between how good or bad your characters may be. So again, a lot of randomness. This will really bring out the game knowledge of our runners here, as they're going to have to react on the fly to exactly what the heck is going on here. So this will be really, really exciting. Also exciting is the flag set for next week, which I'll go over in just a little bit here. But I'm going to give our runners the notice that I am going to kick off this race. So they'll start in about 30 seconds or so. Also, with Setzer's dice, the magic things are altered. There is between 0 and 5 spells on any Esper. The Esper summon is a random value between 1 and 128, and the amount of Espers that can be equipped is a random 6 to 12 characters. So not all characters can equip all espers, so that'll throw a monkey wrench into some of our runners' plans to maybe perhaps use a magic build for certain characters that you would normally lean on. If they can't learn any of the good spells, then maybe that's not a good character to have along here. So those are Setzer's dice. Setzer is going to start with slots. Slots is a pretty decent command for the early game and even into the mid game a little bit. However, it sort of tails off towards the end because, again, we're relying on smashing the A button as hard and as quickly as we possibly can. It looks like our runners are off and going, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask in the chat, as we do see a start with Setzer, Umaro, and Cyan. So Cyan has Steal, and Umaro has Smash. And it looks like Umaro rolled pretty high on the stats as well. Umaro is pretty great to have, actually, for a Coliseum dip. And we see here, Nobodywar is heading immediately over to Albrook, while Mark is heading into the Returner's hideout in order to get their start here in this particular race. Let me go ahead and sync up the stream a little bit more here, and we'll be good to go. So if I had this particular start, we do have the Coliseum available as one of Setzer's free checks that we don't have to fight anything for, which is really good. And we can go peek what the Umaro spot holds by going to the World of Balance Narsh and looking up at the hole that's in the cave there. So we will see. We'll see if we can figure out what's at the Yeti spot. As we're looking in shops, there's a bunch of random stuff to buy. As you can see there, the hero ring is cheaper than normal, but it's still not all that cheap. The great thing about random item prices is that we could sell stuff for a lot of money that normally doesn't sell for that much money. Our characters start off with some things, like Setzer starts off with cards, and Cyan starts off with an Ashura. As we see here, an Aura Lance at 30k is not too shabby of an item here either. Mark is doing a more traditional Returner's hideout and stuff Figaro loop. Meanwhile, Nobodywar went into World of Ruin Albrook first. So I expect to see a little bit of shopping here as, you know, our runners try and figure out what they've got. There's also some looting to be done as well in this particular seed. There is a diamond vest in the chest. The thing about the chest in this particular seed is that each runner will get the same items in the same chest, no matter which chest it is. So Mark's 10th chest and Nobodywar's 10th chest will be the same item, even if that chest isn't the same. Wow, really cheap Magus rods. Unfortunately, the Yeti is the only one who could use it. I would pick that up for later, just for a good stat stick here. Very expensive Phoenix Downs as well. Ooh, an economizer in a box there in Miranda for Nobodywar. Usually that sells for a lot of money. We have no idea what it's going to sell for in this particular feed. It looks like Cyan got very nice rolls on the Vigor and Magic stack with a 44 and 36 respectively. Setzer also got some pretty decent Vigor here. As we see a lot of very high-priced items there in that weapon shop. So yeah, if this were me, what I would be doing is I would do some looting, get whatever the reward is at the Coliseum, and then perhaps do some grinding somewhere so I can go get a Coliseum triple high-tier item. Although, if I get enough stuff in my initial looting, then maybe I don't need to go to the Coliseum to get that high-tier item. So we'll see if our runners decide to do that or not. I haven't really seen anything that jumps out at me and goes, ooh, yeah, this will be good for me for the rest of the seed. The Aura Lance could be good with some Dragoon boots. But yes. There are very cheap pieces of Magicite there. You can crack it, and it will give you a random Esper summon. However, you don't want it to be Crusader, otherwise your party will probably die. And half of the Espers in the game really don't do very much, and the half that do a lot don't do it all that well. So nice little slot play here from nobodywar, picking up that it is an H-bomb seed. So there's a great video on ff6wc.com about slots and how to sort of manipulate them. Slots are rigged, just as they are in real life, and you can't always get the really nice commands with slot all of the time. H-bomb and Sunflare in particular, they're sometimes rigged so that you could never trigger them. So it's cool to see that nobodywar realized, hey, I could do this, and if I do a certain button push pattern, then I can get it basically every single time. 60% of the time it works every time, right, boys and girls? All right, so now that we've got about 5 minutes under our belt, let's make a little announcement. Drum roll, please. So the armorists, I don't know, the gladiators, the people that run the Coliseum tournament, have spun the wheel, and round 3's flag set will be Gogo's Mirror. So we're going to be starting off with Gogo next week. The Coliseum reward is Auto Reflect, which can be both really good and really bad. Good if you don't want to take damage from magic stuff. Bad if you want to heal yourself with cure spells. And it looks like nobodywar is heading right into the auction house right away. This is a spicy, spicy play. And he gets it on the first try, and it's Golem as well. Wow. Very nice. Very cool. All right, so Gogo's Mirror, back to the flag set. Commands have no random excludes, and the experience multiplier is ×4. However, the AI scaling will be at party highest level ×1. So you cannot out-level your enemies in this particular flag set. Ability scaling is also set to 2.5, which is higher than our normal 2, or is it 1.5? I believe it's 2. Also, the no Ultima flag is off, so Ultima can be available in the Gogo set, and that's a very cheap to Zen Thief Esper there for Mark in the World of Balance. So that's really nice. I love this auction house play right away because you're going to get a lot of money in this seed selling a lot of junk. Because there's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be worth a lot more than it usually is. And the auction house items are always the same amount of money. They are always $50,000 for an item, $20,000 for a potential reward, as that is a flame shield, not an Esper there for Mark. I had misspoken before. I thought it said glowing stone, but there was no glowing stone. There's also a $10,000 reward and a $10,000 item. So you know that you need at least 80 or 90K to buy everything in the auction house. And when stuff sells for a lot, that's really good. Unfortunately, with $30,000 earrings for sale, it's going to be a little rough because some of the relics that we're used to buying, we're definitely not going to buy. There's all 5 figures worth of consumable items there for sale in that shop. So Flame Shield is still a great item. It will cast a maximum damage Fire 3 in a pinch if you really need it to crack it and break it. It also teaches your party the Fire 2 spell at a 5 times rate. And it looks like Mark hasn't really found a lot of things that he likes, so he's going to head into the Coliseum. And when you start with Yeti, that is usually a pretty good idea here. A little Marvel Shoes Gauntlet action, and we're going to beef him up and speed him up as well. So we'll see what's in the Coliseum here. We do get to see 120, as we see an offering there. That's the only thing that stuck out at me for a warp stone. So we are going to get an offering, which is very nice for Mark. And we're going to get 3 other high-tier items as well from winning this Coliseum battle. So we'll have to see exactly what they are if he opens up his menu and shows us. We do have the rewards menu, and it tells you what item you could gamble for what reward sometimes, but the enemies that you're fighting are random. Unfortunately, we don't get to see what exactly those 3 high-tier items were. Yeah, so warp stones are pretty valuable for helping you to get out of dungeons faster, and helping you to get out of battles as well, but I'd much rather have an offering. than the potential for a warp stone here. Nobody War is heading into Daryl's tomb, which is one of Setzers' other checks. I'm surprised that nobody has gone to the Coliseum Inn yet, or if they did, I completely missed what it was. But I don't think I did. And it looks like Mark is outside of the Dome of Siege, which is one of Cyan's checks. So there's this concept in Worlds Collide called character gating, where the world events that you can do are based on sort of the story points that involve that particular character. So Mark is going to go ahead and grind on some of these soldiers here in the Dome of Siege. Pulling out the Sun Flare, very nice. So both of our runners getting some good use out of slots early here, as that will nuke most of these enemies here. There was a speed +2 bonus on that particular Esper that I saw on Nobody War's screen with Golem. So Golem is a great Esper to have because it will nullify one of Tier 3's instant death physical specials called Calmness. So we're always looking for some Calmness protection. It looks like he might have Boots and Horn online with Cyan. So we already have a Pogo person in our party for Nobody War, along with the Yeti Smash and the good use of those dice that we saw earlier. With random shops, you can never be too sure exactly how much things sell for, and it looks like we're going to get another character with Shadow at Daryl's tomb. It is not going to be a character here at the Dome of Siege, otherwise they would have joined your party prior to this grinding. A little H-bomb on one side and a little H-bomb fail on the other side there for Nobody War. But Cyan is off and running up into the air there. Now, the fact that we don't have consumables, or that consumables are very highly priced, means that we're going to be in a lot of trouble when it comes to things like being poisoned. We're not going to be able to cure it very easily. However, if we purposefully screw up our slots, I believe Lagomorph, which is the slot ability that you get when there's nothing else, will actually cure your poison status. I'm not positive about that, so let me look that up here while we see the rest of our runners go here. And it's Senor Scrontium Super Sir Behemoth on Nobody War's screen. Alright, so it does cure Dark, Poison, and what is Psych? Psych is Sleep. So it cures Dark, Poison, and Sleep. Or Blind, Poison, and Sleep. So if Mark chooses to get the Lagomorph, Mugu Mugu, as Drossi points out, then he would have cured his poison. I didn't actually see him do it or not do it. And we have a Flame Eater here for Mark. Flame Eater is unfortunately going to absorb that Fire Rod and is not great for that Super Ball that he has in his pocket. Super Ball will deal a random amount of damage to a random number of targets on a multiple of 256. So hopefully these Chocobops will clear out all of the balloons, although I think this will miss because those balloons are floating. No, they're not floating. So now he can go ahead and use that Super Ball with Cyan and know that the Super Ball will definitely hit the Flame Eater. On Nobody War's side, it's Sriracha Behemoth downing Setzer. This is the undead half of Senor Behemoth. It can be taken out with a Doom spell or an X-Zone spell or something else that does instant death. There is a flag in our randomizer called No Undead, which removes the undead status from bosses. So we can't just use a Revivify or a Phoenix down here to take out the Behemoth. But we have simultaneous boss kills here for Nobody War and for Mark. Nobody War is going to get his fourth character with Shadow. Shadow also has Steel. So we got a couple of thieves over there on Nobody War's side between Cyan with Steel and Shadow with Steel. Setzer, meanwhile, Mark rather, taking out the Flame Eater to get Shoat to put his first Esper on the board here. Ficta commenting, everybody knows balloons don't float. Could have fooled me, I guess. All right, another flame shield as a reward there, this time from the Coliseum Inn. So we got a flame shield at the Tzen Thief and a flame shield at the Coliseum Inn that both of our runners look like they're going to pick up here. Almost a little high five action going on here in World of Ruin Coliseum. So for those of you that have just joined us, the announcement of next week's flags, it will be Gogo's Mirror in the Coliseum for round 3. There are no global stat adjustments. You get auto-reflect for winning a Coliseum battle. There are no random excludes for the commands. The experience multiplier is ×4. However, the scaling is at party highest level ×1, so you can't actually out-level your enemies in this flag set. The ability scaling is at 2.5, which I believe is a half a point higher than what we're normally used to. Let me go and double check that. So yeah, normally it's scale element, and the ability scaling factor is 2. This is 2.5, so our enemies will be hitting us with slightly harder spells than we're used to. However, we do have the ability to learn Ultima in this particular flag set, so it should be an interesting bit of vanilla there with having Ultima. nobodywar, I don't know if he knows that the Yeti Cave is, or what the Yeti Cave is, rather. I don't think we've seen either runner go into Narsh yet, and this is the World of Ruin Narsh, so we're not quite sure what is the reward at the Yeti Cave. However, Mark is going to get his shadow here at Daryl's Tomb. And we'll have to see if nobodywar decides to take this dragon on here. So dragons are scaled with the same that the enemies are, and the scaling is 2.5 times your progression. So his dragon will be at level 5 times 2, which is 10, plus half of 5, which is 12.5. So the dragon will probably be at level 13 or 14 in this particular set of options, and it will teach us some great spells because it gives 50 magic points. It does give a ton of experience as well. It drops its normal vanilla drop, which is usually a pretty good item, and it drops another high tier item. So I think nobodywar might be taking it. He was a little back and forth here. So up at the top of Narsh, we have the Tritok Cliff, which is actually not character gated, as Strength +1 plus Merton on that shoat there. And with a couple of flame shields and a red jacket, I think was in the basement of South Figaro. So we're almost all the way here to Merton protection. Unfortunately for nobodywar, it is Vargas and the Apple Toilets, the Ipoos. If we had Blitz, we could end this fight right away, the vanilla way, with Pummel, but we just won't get nearly as much XP as we would if we beat Vargas the other way, which is just hitting him with sticks. Yeah, so Chocobop actually does more damage than 7 Flush does. However, Chocobop will miss on targets that are floating. Both are pretty decent, though, for what they are. Most slots are based off of magic power, so you want to beef up your slots user with earrings or some magic increasing items. Like I believe one of our 2 runners has an enhancer on their slots user, so that'll give +7 magic power to our slots user, whomever it might be. All right, another set of simultaneous boss kills here. We know that Mark will be picking up his shadow, and let's see if for nobodywar, it is a piece of magicite there at the Tritok spot, Terra's Daddy Maduin. He's going to head back down here, presumably save, and then hop into the Yeti cave. So interesting thing to note is that Mark did go to the Coliseum, and he ended up getting an offering for a warp stone. He also got 2 other high-tier items. I'm not quite sure what they were because they don't actually tell you what they are when you reward them. You have to check your inventory, and he did not show it to us. And that's Go-Go. Speaking of Go-Go, that is Go-Go there. And it is the White Dragon here for Nobody War, casting some Aqua Rake. Yikes! So that's where you see the random ability scaling there. Usually the White Dragon only casts Pearl or Holy Elemental spells, but that Aqua Rake is a big yikes, wiping 3/4 of his party there. It looks like he's going back at it again, hoping for some better RNG. However, White Dragon casts up to 3 spells at the very beginning of a fight, so this could be a very, very bad time for him. Especially when getting unlucky with level 4 Flare. Yeah, this White Dragon fight's going to be nasty. Mark decides that with Go-Go, he's going to set his party down to 1 and head to the Zone Eater Cave. Do we have any predictions in chat? How many times he'll be thrown off of the bridge? So Nobody War decides not to take the White Dragon yet. He decides he's going to continue on into the Yeti Cave, and he's not going to check this monster in a box. He has no reason to yet. The reason why we'd want to check in monster in a boxes are for offerings from Katana Soul. Maybe a Minerva chance for pugs, but that's a stretch because it's only a 1/8 chance per pug. And this bridge troll really letting Mark saying, "You shall not pass." It is a piece of Magicite there in the Eye of the Carving, so that's going to be Nobody War's 3rd Magicite. Unfortunately, he cannot equip it before this battle. And we'll have to see exactly what this battle is. Oh, this Zone Eater is brutal. Ooh, speaking of brutal. Oh my Goddess over on Nobody War's screen. I don't know if I'd rather have Goddess earlier or later. Because later is definitely awful, because then you get, like I said, since it's not ability scaling, it's random scaling, or rather, since it's not elemental scaling, it's random scaling. Yeah, this could be a really, really awful fight, as Mark gets finally tossed off the bridge there. This is some of the worst Chancellor luck I've ever seen. He has not stepped like an inch over the dividing line here, and there it is. Mark can easily get past it on the 2nd time. Sometimes you just got to get thrown off once, and then you're good to go. The other thing about this Goddess fight is Yeti likes to smash, and when Goddess gets attacked with a physical attack, she may counter with Love Token, which means the person that is doing physical damage will eat that physical damage for her. Thankfully, he's got Cyan up in the air with that Aura Lance and that Boots and Horn, and that, I think, is going to be another wipe for Nobody War. He is sort of stuck in a sticky situation up here at the top of Narsh. Can't beat the White Dragon and can't beat the Goddess, so we'll see if he decides to warp out, and that's character number 6 for Mark already, with Locke. See if he puts Locke into the party or not. I didn't even see what Locke had. But Mark decides it's good enough for me. And it was 1 bridge throw, although it could have counted for 7 because of how much time he wasted there. All right, Nobody War looks like he's going to do a little bit of grinding in order to get some levels up for him to take on either the White Dragon or the Goddess at the spot there. So Fantastodon pointing out Locke has sketch and kind of mid-range stats. You will be able to equip a lot of great items, and we did have the offering from the Coliseum, if you remember. So if Mark can find himself either an Atma weapon or a Valiant knife, Locke could equip either one of those. Actually, I'm not too sure about the Atma weapon anymore. So in Worlds Collide, how it usually goes in standard races is characters can equip their vanilla equipables plus a 33% chance at having something that they can't equip. So yes, so Locke can naturally equip the Atma weapon and the Valiant knife. Mark digging in a monster in a box and finding Gigantos, the highest XP per level in the game from this particular monster here. This is probably something nobodywar would have liked to have gotten for his grind. And it looks like Mark's going to take a reset out of here. Maybe he's not happy with his levels at the moment, and feels that he's going to wipe to Gigantos, because Gigantos will put out a ton of damage. It looks like he forgot to heal himself. Dirty water buckets. There we go. All right, so in case you missed it, we did announce that the round 3 flag set will be Gogo's Mirror. As there's a Gigantos win. Gogo's Mirror gives Auto Reflect for a Coliseum win. And the interesting thing about Gogo's Mirror is that the no Ultima flag is off, meaning we can learn Ultima. However, the experience multiplier at ×4 and the enemy scaling at party highest level ×1 means that we're not going to be able to out-level our enemies, and the ability scaling is 2.5 instead of the standard 2. So there's a Thunder Shield and a chest there for Mark. He already has, I believe, 2 Flame Shields, or at least 1 from the Tizen Thief. I think nobodywar picked up the other one from the Coliseum Inn. No, Mark also went to the Coliseum Inn. So he's got a red jacket, 2 Flame Shields, and a Thunder Shield. So Merton strats will be online for him, regardless of whether he decides to uncrack this Cursed Shield or not. And the Cursed Shield is at a level 4. So only 4 battles for the Cursed Shield in order to turn that into a Paladin Shield. And unlike in Gogo's Mirror flag set, we will not be able to learn Ultima from the Paladin Shield here. Let's see what this reward is. It's a choice between an Atma weapon and an economizer. And as we mentioned earlier, Mark was able to grab the offering from the Coliseum. So that's a great pickup for him. Now he's got an Atma weapon for Locke to use at the end of the game. Atma weapon will come online around level 32, just because of the way that the damage multiplier with that weapon works. Nobodywar finally deciding that he was done grinding and is going to go fight this white dragon here. Ended up surviving the initial onslaught of spells and does take down the dragon. Very nicely done there. Good perseverance. And that will hopefully catapult him with enough levels to defeat Goddess. Mark is going to learn real fast that White Dragon don't play in the very beginning of the fight here. So it looks like nobodywar did end up warping out of World of Ruin Narsh, deciding to leave Goddess up there. Did take out the dragon, though, and did get the Esper at the Tritox spot, so it wasn't all a loss. Maybe he's feeling like I need to do some momentum here. And it's number 24 on the right-hand side at the Search the Sky spot. Question in the chat from Drossi. I suppose Vanish Doom isn't an option. So there is a flag that will allow you to do a Vanish Doom. However, in all of the flag sets of the Coliseum, that particular option is set to off, meaning Vanish Doom is quote-unquote fixed for Worlds Collide. Worlds Collide also fixes a bunch of other vanilla bug fixes. Infamously, the sketch glitch is fixed in Worlds Collide. Also, the evade bug, where it doesn't take the evade into account for physical attacks, that has also been fixed. But you can tailor your seed to make it on or off, depending upon what you'd like to choose on our website, ff6wc.com. It's also got a link to the Discord where you can come and ask the community about all things Worlds Collide there. As that is Esper number 3 for Nobody War. So Nobody War and Mark have the same amount of progression here. Each have 8. But Nobody Wars is slightly more balanced with 4 characters and 3 Espers. Meanwhile, Mark is very heavily invested in his characters right now. All he's looking for is Espers. And sometimes it's not a bad thing. This way you know if it's not an Esper at whatever check it is you're going to, you don't want to do it, right? So that could sometimes be a blessing in disguise. However, if you start to accumulate more than 6 characters, that just means that your enemies are going to get harder and harder and harder, because the enemy scaling is based on your progression. All right, so Nobody Wars in the Cave in the Veldt. This is one of Shadow's checks. It will dump you off into World of Ruin Thamasa at the very bottom right-hand corner of the map. So that is essentially going to be a good thing for him, because then he could do some shopping and do some looting. You can peek what this reward is on the floor, so we'll see what Interceptor wanted us to rescue at the beginning here. All right, and it is an Esper on the floor here. So that's going to get him to an even 4-4. Mark is going to get his Esper here after Vargas. That's going to give him his second. And then we know that there's an Esper down in the Yeti Cave. However, you have to beat a Goddess, which is a lot harder in this flag set than normal, because with Setzers dice, the ability scaling is set to random instead of by element. However, Mark has Merton protection and Merton, which is something that Nobody War did not have. So he had a much tougher time. Also, Yeti does not help with a Goddess fight either, proccing Love Token all of the time. Esper number 4 for Nobody War, Esper number 2 for Mark. Alright, well, it looks like the command to show off the runners is not working. So, Mark's Twitch is twitch.tv/erosions55, and it's twitch.tv/nobodywar. As you can see here on Mark's screen, he was unable to equip some Espers onto some of his characters. That's one of the quirks of the Setzer flag set, is that your Espers are randomly equipable by anywhere from 6 to 12 characters. So not every character can equip every Esper. And obviously Gogo and Umaro can't equip Espers, so that's why that number is 12. Nice chest picked up with a hero ring there. Alright, so we'll see where Nobody War goes, as we know that Mark will be running up against the Goddess here. And I think he'll have no problems here. Just because, like I said, he's got Merton. And he doesn't have Yeti. There we go. Thank you, Drossi, for the pulling the beepity bops behind the scenes. Appreciate that. And there you go. There's our links to follow our runners. Nobody Wars into Zen. And is going to buy himself a flame shield. No, he's not. I'm going to stop trying to guess what our runners are doing here. So it looks like Mark is trying for a steal on Goddess. You can steal a Minerva from Goddess, which is one of the most powerful armors in the game. Oh no, that's a triple bar. Let's hope he gets lucky here. And that's Reviver, so that's Seraphim. That's not a bad cast. It's going to heal his party for less than a cure too. So it's pretty pitiful, actually. But at least it's not something like Crusader that could damage the team, or Alexander with Justice that would heal Goddess for a lot. However, Steel does proc Love Token, as you did see. Minerva Steel is on the cards right there. He's already got Merton Protection, so I'm not sure why you would need Minerva's. I guess to nullify out the other elements, it will nullify fire, water, fire, ice, and lightning. And now is the time to use that Super Ball. 6,400. Wow, that's a very high roll. So Super Balls usually tail off once you're in, level like 15 or so. But Mark is able to make it work for this fight. Goddess has very high magic defense, which is why you see some of these magic attacks not hitting all that hard. 7 Flush will actually ignore magic defense, so it's a little bit more powerful. And Goddess is casting Overcast now, which means when that timer runs out, your characters will turn into zombies. It's not fun. It's never any fun. Nobodywar hitting up the shops that we saw Mark get at the very beginning of the seed. And that is Goddess down with that Choco-Bop. It's like Poison Unskinny Bop, but with Chocobos. Could you imagine somebody making a song like Unskinny Bop, but doing it all with wargs? Oh, that's awful. I just gave somebody a really bad idea. You can thank me later. Alright, so that's third Magicite for Mark. And he also has 2 more characters than Nobodywar does, so we'll see where our runners decide to go next. Mark has more of the world open to him because of his character selection. Nobodywar still has yet to do any of Cyan's checks, which is Mount Zozo, Cyan's Dream, which is a 3-part check, and it looks like that's what Mark is about to do, except he turns away from it. We also haven't seen the Floating Continent either, which is a 3-part check. That's one of Shadow's checks. And that's character number 5 there for Nobodywar, picking up Go-Go. And yeah, those are the only things that are open to Nobodywar, unfortunately, because he does not have Lock. Lock will open up the Norse Weapon Shop, which we saw was a choice between 2 items. It was between an Atma weapon and an economizer. He also opens up the South Figaro Cave Tunnel Armor check. Nobodywar going to grab a chest from Coliseum, dude, in the World of Balance. We don't see that one treasure chest very often, that little pot there. It looks like he's going to hop over into the World of Ruin to go pick up his 3 high-tier items from the Coliseum, plus whatever rewards he could find. And what's up, Speed Gaming 2, with a raid of 103 people? Welcome to Final Fantasy VI Worlds Collide, the Final Fantasy VI randomizer. We got a great match here, and it looks like we got another red jacket in the Coliseum, along with that offering that we had seen before. And it looks like Nobodywar is going to go grab this offering. Even though I don't think he has anything to pair it with just yet. But an offering is usually pretty good nonetheless. And he'll get his 3 high-tier items. Meanwhile, Mark is heading into Cyan's Dream, which is a 3-part check. The first part and the third part can reward either an Esper or an item, and the second part is guaranteed progression, either a character or an Esper. Esper, rather. I don't know if nobodywar has an Atma weapon. I know that Mark does from the Narsh weapon shop. Unless I missed him somehow picking it up somewhere. Alright, so here's the first boss of the dream. It looks like Mark's levels are slightly higher here than nobodywar's at 26 versus 22. And their progression is nearly the same. One is one more character than the other, and one is one more Esper than the other. So hopefully this will be a 3 for 3 for Mark. Esper, Esper, Esper. And it is the second Ultros of the seed, Ultros 2. This is the Opera House Ultros because 1, the music has continued on, and 2, it is a pincer attack. So that's how you know this is the Opera House Ultros. This should about do it for him, or maybe not. The bad thing about Merton is that it does cost 80 MP per cast. We did grab an economizer at some point in one of the chests, so that's probably what Mark is using to keep his magic points in check. And that is the Raiden Esper, the first one there at Cyan's Dream. Ultros 2 is probably the best Ultros because it's the easiest one to kill other than Ultros number 1. It's a pincer attack, which is great because that means you'll always go first in a pincer attack. And unlike Ultros number 4, you actually get XP from it. Ultros number 3, you could end the fight right away if you have Sketch to do it the vanilla way with the cutscene, but you don't get the XP from it. And otherwise, Ultros 3 has actually a lot more HP than Ultros 2. The only problem with Ultros 2 is if you don't kill Ultros 2 fast enough, he'll disappear underneath the quote-unquote floorboards and come back up, and he actually has a different pool of HP every time he comes up. Fantastodon showing love for Ultros 1 with those teeth. Ultros 2, now with 100% less tentacles and 100% more chompers. Yeah, so in the vanilla game, both Tritok and Ultros, they have this bit that's set an event to make it so that the music does not play for the boss music. It makes the music that's currently in the background continuing. For Tritok, it's just the World of Ruin Narsh theme. And for Ultros, it's the grand finale theme. So that's why their boss battles have those particular quirks. Whereas other bosses that are in the Opera House or at Tritok Cliff, their music will switch to the normal boss theme and then switch back because of just the way that Worlds Collide is coded with those events. nobodywar grabbing another Magicite there. That's number 5. That's the one with Merton on it. I know that in the future, we may have a quote-unquote fix to allow it to always play the grand finale theme whenever you're in the Opera House. Because it's just setting and resetting an event, which we know how to do. When I was trying to work through the music randomizer for this game, that was one area that gave me headaches. Unfortunately, Mark forgets that Merton will heal one of the 2 cranes because the one on the right absorbs fire and the one on the left absorbs lightning. nobodywar is throwing up a Hail Mary pass here, heading to the floating continent. I love this play at this point for him because he's got 5 characters and 5 Espers. The first and the third set of rewards in the floating continent is guaranteed to be either an Esper or a character, and the second one is an Esper or an item. It's a bit of a longer check, but you could also get levels from these random encounters here. And like I said, we're guaranteed with 2 pieces of progression at least. So the game is in somewhat active development. We do have people that are working on sort of the beepity bops behind the scenes, which is great. So we do get feedback, and there is a beta testing channel where you can test out the new development features if you so choose to do so. And that's 2 for 3 in the dream. 2 espers and a cat hood. So that's not bad. That's sort of what Mark needed there, was to stop getting characters and keep getting espers. So that's nice for him to see. And he's still got some options available to him.
The more people criticize him, the bigger he gets.
He has not done the Doomgaze spot, so if you have Setzer in your party, you can automatically search the skies, and you'll fight whatever the Doomgaze boss is. This is number 24, and I believe this is also an Esper. So he's going to be at 6 and 6. I don't remember if he did Cave on the Veldt either, which is also another Esper. So that would give him 6 and 7. But then he's starting to run out of places, right? There's South Figaro Cave, there's Phoenix Cave, and I think he's done most of the rest, because he went down into Zone Eater. He's done most of Cyan's checks. I don't think he's done Mount Zozo. So there are some options here open for Mark. But we'll see if this Floating Continent play pays off for nobodywar here. It's a bit of a longer check, like I said. It's usually in the range of like 8 to 9 minutes or so, depending upon how bad your bosses are. But you do get 2 guaranteed pieces of progression and a 3rd chance at an Esper. However, you do have to fight 2 bosses after 3 forced encounters on this first path. So it's going to take a while for him to get there. Then he's got to walk all the way through Floating Continent and fight another boss. Then it's another 2 forced encounters and a boss at the very end. So Floating Continent's a bit of a longer play, as Mark picks up Esper number 6. We'll see where he decides to go. And it looks like he's going to follow Locke checks here. Going to do the South Figaro Cave. So, note for nobodywar, this is the 2nd time that he's fought Flame Eater. And remember when I talked about the Kefka Tower skip? Giving you a skip with 12 bosses. That's 12 unique bosses. So this boss kill actually will not count towards his boss total. He's sitting right now at 5, whereas Mark has 7. So that's just something to keep in the back of our mind as well. And that's Flame Eater dead for nobodywar. He's going to drop down, get a story heal, and then fight boss number 2. We're on YouTube, FF6 Worlds Collide. We're also on Twitter at FF6_WC, and we're also on Instagram at FF6WC. If you want to follow us on some of our socials, that is a Doomgaze here, and unfortunately, Cyan did not pass the level check. And it's Dadaluma, our favorite flying ninja person potion popper, over on nobodywar's screen. Doomgaze in Worlds Collide doesn't run away like he does in the vanilla games, so he is a big beefy boss because you're fighting all phases of Doomgaze in one go here, and that's another death in the party for Mark. Using those precious Phoenix Downs. Remember, those are not cheap, since all of the items in shops are completely and totally random. I think they're 30k a pop for a Phoenix Down. So we're going to want to get this fight over with quickly. Nobodywar seeing an Esper on the ground, but actually didn't pick it up yet. Forgot to put on the Moogle Charm, so let's decrement one from that Esper count. And man, Cyan cannot stay alive. Better call the Bee Gees. I also do not think that he has any more Phoenix Downs. Nope, he is out of Phoenix Downs. Unfortunately, that means Cyan is going to stay napping. Because I didn't remember seeing any life spells that Mark had earned yet. Alright, I believe that nobodywar finally picked up his Esper. And there we go. That's Doomgaze dead. And Cyan is also dead. Unfortunately, that means he will not get any XP. However, that is another Magicite for Mark. He's happy to see that. Alright, so let's think about where Mark can go to get his Espers. He can go to the auction house. We know that one is there, and we know that nobodywar grabbed one there. I don't think he did South Figaro Cave yet, and I know that there is one there. So that's two places he could get Espers for certain. We do not know if Phoenix Cave has Espers or not. And we know that Floating Continent at least starts with one. However, at this point in the seed, I don't foresee Mark going all the way up to the Floating Continent. It's a bit of a lengthy one here. Yeah, Merton strats are great when you could pull them off. We got a Flame Shield from the Tzen Thief, a Flame Shield from the Colin Jinin check. We got a Paladin Shield over on Mark's screen anyway. We found a red jacket in South Figaro Cave basement, and we found a Thunder Shield, I believe was one of the high tier item rewards from doing Coliseum fight. Green Monkey pointing out in chat that we do have random tiered shops, which basically means that shops are worse overall because you're less likely to find a shop with really good stuff in it. And Phoenix Downs are considered good stuff. Speaking of good stuff, that is Fun Baba there at the second part of the Floating Continent. Do not have access to Bio, do have access to Poison, which is Fun Baba's weakness. It's green, so hit it with the mucusy stuff. The other problem with Merton is that since it's both technically a fire and wind-based spell, if a boss either absorbs or nullifies either fire or wind, then you're SOL. Like, for instance, Atma is weak to fire, but absorbs wind, so you can't use Merton on Atma. Another Ultros 1 sighting, and after 2 Mertons, it disappears there, and that'll be Esper number 8 for Mark. He is 1 away from go mode. We do know that the Coliseum, not the Coliseum, that the auction house has an Esper. Nobodywar bought it at the beginning of the seed. It was Golem, which is a really nice find to have. But Mark has some other options for his last Esper, including Phoenix Cave, Kefkat Narsh, and Floating Continent. So I fully anticipate him going to the auction house, because those options, as I'm saying them out loud, I'm throwing up in my mouth. Oh, Mount Zozo. I don't think any of our runners went to Mount Zozo yet. Let's see. Nope. So Mount Zozo is also an option, as nobodywar gets yeeted off of the trifecta there. And he'll come up against 2 force encounters and 1 more boss to round out this Floating Continent play. Ooh, that's a nice Esper to find as well. Starlet with Mute. That will nullify one of the parts of Final Kefka. And Mark is selling a lot of stuff here. 30k for for leather armor. Is buying a couple of sleeping bags. Sleeping bags, however, will not bring characters back to life, so those are not Phoenix Downs. I wonder if he's going to go and buy some. Or is he going to make this a permadeath seed, as Falcon Hit pointed out? We shall see. Alright, it looks like we're heading to Jador, so Mark is heading over to the auction house, where he will get his go mode, depending upon how good or bad the RNG will be here in the auction house. So the auction house has 5 different slots in it. There's a 50% chance that you get the $50,000 slot, which is always just some random item. Then there's a 25% chance that you get the $20,000 reward, which could be an Esper or could be a high tier item. This is the $10,000 item. I'm sorry. This is the $20,000 reward slot. So in this case, it's a high tier item, the Economizer. We do know, because Nobody War already did it, that Golem is the $10,000 reward slot. There's also a $10,000 item slot and an unpurchasable imp robot cutscene. So that's the order of how likely things are to appear. So Mark just bought the $20,000 reward slot. And here is the $10,000 Esper Golem, and he will get his go mode without having to buy the $50,000 item, which is the thing that's most likely going to come up when you go into the auction house. So for newer runners out here, what you want to do is when you buy something from the auction house in the World of Ruin, it comes out of the pool. So you want to buy the $50,000 item, and then you could easily, or rather have a higher chance of easily accessing the $20,000 reward or the $10,000 reward. And there it is, Golem for go mode for Mark at 56 minutes on the dot-ish. Green Monkey pointing out that his levels are a little bit on the lower side, especially with a Setzers dice flag set. We do have random ability scaling versus element ability scaling, and if you run into some really bad luck with the things that your bosses cast, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Nobody War pulling out Shote for the Inferno spot, knowing that one of the arms is susceptible to petrify, and that's what Shote does. Very nicely done there. Great heads-up play. So Spoon 101 asks, what seed is this? This is the Coliseum 2, and this is Setzers Dice flag set. So if you want a rundown on what the Coliseum 2 flag sets look like, I hope that Nightbot doesn't destroy me for this. That is the link to the Coliseum 2 rules and info. So we are playing with Setzers Dice, meaning that we started off with Setzer with slots. And there's a lot of randomness to this seed. Random priced items in shops, random 0 through 5 spells on Espers. Espers are random equipable. And bosses are random ability scaling, as there is Mog at the end of the floating continent for Nobody War. Pretty good magic power, pretty bad ability. We've seen some horrific abilities so far this seed, right? We've seen 2 seals, 2 sketches, a slot, a Yeti smash, a mimic, and I think that's it. What does Locke have? Locke has sketch. Cyan and Shadow have steel. Sets are slots. Yeah, so those are the... No, because we've seen 7 characters. I'm missing one. That's okay. One of you guys in the chat will let me know how I screwed up. Nobody War curiously heading into Cyan's Dream, which has 3 rewards, even though it only has 2 bosses, and he only needs 2 more Espers for go mode. We know this here in the booth because we've seen what Mark has done, and this will also give him his go mode because this is 2 Espers and an item. Looks like Mark is looking for those Phoenix Downs here. Still cannot find them. I'm sorry, your Phoenix Downs are in another castle. Picks up a tent, so at least this way he can revive his character after a battle if it happens to be that way. But yeah, I don't remember. There were Phoenix Downs in a shop somewhere. I saw they were 30,000. So, question from the chat from Magre: how close will Nobody War be to bosses after Cyan's Dream? He's at 8 right now, prior to this Ultras fight. Make that 9. Mark has 9. But remember, it is unique bosses. So, if we somehow manage to find a duplicate boss in Kefka's Tower at either the Inferno, Guardian, or Poltergeist spot, then that nukes our idea of a skip. So something very weary to keep your eye out on is that skip is not necessarily guaranteed in this flag set, even if you run straight at bosses, because it's unique bosses and not individual bosses. As Nobody War picks up Esper number 8 at just over the hour mark here, and I have serendipitously cut off Mark's timer. Let me go and fix that here for everybody real fast. All right, now we got the 1 hour there. There we go. So yeah, chat, let me know. What do you think? Do we, at 9 bosses, do we risk doing the overloaded party down the middle and hope that out of the 3 bosses we don't get something that we've already seen, or do we play it safe and do it the normal way with the 2 in the slot number 3, the 1 in slot number 2, and the 1 in slot number 1? It looks like Mark has found what he was looking for, so he's heading back over to the World of Ruin, into Kefka's Tower. I don't know if he got the those Phoenix Downs. Looks like Mark is rolling the dice and taking the chance. Gutsy play here. Gotta stay with the theme. I like it, Callie or Dark. We're rolling the Setzers dice. Alright, Nobody War is gonna have to fight one more boss here. I forget which one it was. Yeah, I don't remember which one it was here at the end of at the dream. But he will get his go mode after defeating this boss. Lock Cole coming in. They were 35,000 for a Phoenix Down. Wow, even more than I thought. I knew they were expensive. I knew they were in the 30,000-ish range because I saw Mark buy 2 when he had like 50 or 60 something K or 70K. All right, it is the cranes here for Nobody War. The left one loves lightning, so don't use lightning on it, and that means the right one absorbs fire. And Mark is walking his other party members through the tower before deciding to take a look at what the first boss here in Kefka's Tower is. If it is something we've already seen, then Mark has a decision to make. Does he warp out with his party at this time and split it up, or does he keep going? Of course, Mark is making us wait with bated breath. As Nobody War grabs his go mode there, unlocking Final Kefka, objective complete. We'll see if he decides to check the throne. Remember, it was just an item. And it looks like he's not going to bother. Because remember, if it was an Esper up there, then that means he would increase his bosses by 2.5 levels. So for him, already being in go mode, there isn't really a point in checking it. I may have checked to see if it was an item or not, and gotten it if it was an item. But again, that's a time loss, and maybe he's feeling a little bit behind, with how brutal that World of Ruin Narsh was for him earlier in the seed. Inflation hitting Final Fantasy VI. Oh no. It's a disaster. It's Flame Eater. Which means that this will not be a unique boss. Well, the good thing about it is he didn't walk all that far. So what he'll have to do is he'll kill this boss with his entire crew. Oh no, it's Quake. Oh, that did a lot less damage than I thought it was going to. And there it is, $30,000 Phoenix Downs, 35K. You see it on nobodywar's screen. Yeah, so that is part of the random scaling that is on the bosses in this flag set. Flame Eater using Quake and Whirlwind when he only normally uses fire elemental spells. And oof, this is a rough go here. $30,000 earrings too, jeez. It's people at IKEA, man. Tariffs must be really high in that part of the world. Alright, we'll see if Mark can outlast this Flame Eater here. It looks like nobodywar is not as confident about his levels, so he is heading into the Opera House Dragon. No, he's not. He's picking himself up here. Curiously, nobodywar has 10 bosses, whereas Mark only has 9. So this Flame Eater here is not the worst thing in the world for him. However, he cannot find another duplicate boss later in the tower if he wants to do a skip. So we'll see what Mark does here. We'll see if he continues onward or if he skips out now and splits up his party. A little bit of Gauntlet action. So Gauntlet actually doesn't help with the Atma weapon because it can't be two-handed. However, Offering is good with the Atma weapon. However, Atma weapon is based on your row. So it'll do half damage from the back row. And currently, Locke is in the back row. So hopefully Mark will bump him up into the front row. He definitely did during the fight against Flame Eater. So he knows that. It's just a matter of, you know, doing it in your menu. Question from the chat from Locke Hall. It is a post-apocalyptic era for prices, but where do they store all that gil? The Yeti's snow muffler is surprisingly cozy. That's definitely where they did it. And nobodywar actually has Umaro in his final party, so I like this a lot. From a viewing standpoint, not from a if I was doing what he was doing standpoint. Somehow missed the 7 flush. I've only done that like once or twice. 7 flush is almost always rigged to actually hit. Meanwhile, Mark is continuing his trek through Kefka's Tower. And we'll see what the boss is here in the middle. Just based on the numbers of HP, it looks like nobodywar does have a level advantage. He did not decide to go to the dragon, and it looks like he doesn't need it. Oh my goddess, this is another repeat boss here. Now, Mark did beat Goddess at the Yeti spot, however, nobodywar did not. So for nobodywar, this is a unique boss for him, but it is not a unique boss for Mark. This is a very dangerous spot because we've walked all throughout Kefka's Tower and we haven't saved in a while. So if Mark unfortunately bites the dust here, he's going to lose all that walking time. I don't think this will be a problem, though, with his offense. He's got Flare, he's got Bahamut to summon, and he's got Merton. Ah, I see what Nobody War did. He decided instead of taking the Opera House Dragon, he's going to take a dragon in Kefka's Tower with his full party. And it is the Storm Dragon, who is weak to lightning. Fortunately, we don't have that. I don't think he picked up the Thunder Shield that Mark picked up. So maybe the Thunder Shield was not a reward for doing Coliseum battle. Yeah, so it's very curious. Mark's offense is certainly more potent with Merton, even though his levels are less than what I think Nobody Wars are. Because this Fire 2 is not going to cut it for the end of the game here. Oh, that's a landslide taking out Locke. That's Dragon number 2 down for Nobody War. Let's see what he gets from this drop. He gets the normal X Zone and another Snow Muffler. And there it is, the Goddess spot. French Vanilla at Inferno, rather at Guardian, is down. And just in case you're joining us, this is Final Fantasy VI Worlds Collide. It is the open world randomizer for Final Fantasy VI. And we are now in Kefka's Tower, and the goal of the randomizer is to defeat Kefka. So we're on our way to our goal here. Alright, so let's see what this boss is at the Spicy Chicken spot. If this boss is something that we have not seen before, then that means Nobody War will have skip. What is he doing? Alright, so Nobody War is warping back out, and it looks like he's going to split up his party a little bit of a different way. I guess he's worried about not getting the skip. It's unfortunate that he would have gotten the skip because he had Atma, which is here, which he hasn't fought yet, and he's had Goddess. So that could have been some time that he might have been able to make up. Unfortunately, Mark finding out the hard way that Atma absorbs Merton, because it is a wind and fire based attack, and Atma absorbs wind. Yeah, so I believe the Phoenix Downs were in World of Balance, Nikea, maybe? Oh no, Quake coming out. Which actually is pretty, like, Worlds Collide standard for Atma, anyway. He does a lot of those non-elemental attacks. Or rather, he does a lot of those more rarer elemental attacks, Quake being an earth element. Alright, so Nobody War is setting up his party. He just needs 2 bosses for skip. Whereas Mark cannot essentially get skip, because by the time he's done with the boss here and the boss at the other 2 statues, that's when he's going to get to 12, if the other statue bosses are unique for him. Whereas Nobody War has the potential to get the skip with both the Goddess and the Atma fight. So we'll see which direction he chooses to go in first, because the bad thing about splitting up your party is that he's going to be taking only 2 characters in towards that Goddess spot if he decides to go to the Goddess spot first, which is going to be awful. Alright, so Mark has sent his whole party up the middle here. We'll see if he decides to peek either one of the statues before saving and having to walk all the way back through the tower again. deciding whether or not to use those precious sleeping bags. The precious. Precious. Alright, my Gollum impersonation needs work. I'm sorry. Alright, Mark going back in the tower now. He has to walk his way through the entire tower, but he could just overload party 1 and 2 and not worry about the trek in the middle because he's already cleared out the middle path. It's a little bit of repeat walking here, but it is definitely the safer way to go. Whereas Nobody War is doing the splitting up of his party, and that'll make each one of these boss fights take a lot longer than Mark just took with his full party. B+, you're too kind.
Happy holidays, Mr.
I used to be able to do it a lot better, but I've been sick like the past week or so. And you would think that that would help out with my voice doing that, but it doesn't allow me to get the vocal cords to the place that I needed to go. Alright, we'll see what Nobody War decides, if he's going to go up the middle party, which I assume he's going to, or if he will take the left or right path first. If he goes up the middle, I think this is going to be a disaster because he has Cyan and Umaro in the middle path. As I mentioned earlier, Goddess will cast Love Token, which means that the person on the other end will have to eat physical damage that would normally be going towards Goddess, and since Yeti can only smash, he's going to have to smash himself a few times. And it looks like we're going to get this French Vanilla Goddess here at the Guardian spot, so we'll see how Nobody War holds up. Oh, and thankfully he brought Cyan and Mog to this party. And Cyan has jump, which is great because you can't hit what you can't see on the screen. Unfortunately, Mog with a Pearl Lance is going to end up healing Goddess, because Goddess will absorb both Pearl and Lightning. Nobody War casting Phantom on both of his characters. This means that physical attacks will always hit, and physical attacks will always miss, and magical attacks will always hit. So unfortunately that means that Mog is going to be on the receiving end of that Flare Star. Yeah, Nobody War is doing a metric ton of damage with that Aura Lance with Cyan. Do back attacks do double on jump? I know they do double on regular fight. I didn't know if they did double on jump as well. Pulling out the fire rods, and that is Goddess down from Nobody War. Very nicely done. That fight was actually faster than what Mark did, and he had his full party. Just shows you the power of the jump. So jump will always do 2.5 times damage with a lance. It does 1.5 times damage with all other weapons. I'm getting word in the chat that it's plus 100% damage on jump if they're facing backwards, which is kind of gnarly. That I didn't know. And since Goddess is in a pincer attack, Goddess will always be facing backwards towards whatever side of the party that she did not just hit. And it's piranhas on the left-hand side, so a little bit of a time sink here for Mark, but this fight should not be too difficult. Ooh, Mog eating a wombat. You hate to see it happen. Get these marsupials out of my game. And unfortunately, this is going to break that that Phantom status over on nobodywar. A solo Cyan against the big bad Atma, and he does take it down. Very nicely done. And we do see Mark here on his side is summoned Risopus, the leader of the Piranhas. Risopus and the Piranhas, my favorite Final Fantasy VI punk band. And that is Kefka Tower skip accomplished for nobodywar. So what he can do is he could run up, he could hit a save, and he could reform his parties at the statues in order to get some more levels. So we'll see if nobodywar decides to do that. But this is a very close race, folks. We have essentially one boss difference between our two runners here. However, that also means that Mark is only one boss away from being able to step on the switches to fight Kefka. So just in case you're joining us a little bit late, this is the Coliseum 2, Round 2, where we're doing Setzers Dice Flag set. We did announce earlier in the stream that Round 3 will be Gogo's Mirror as the weapon of choice for our gladiators. So Gogo's Mirror flag set, where we're going to start with Gogo. Winning a Coliseum gets you auto-reflect. There are no random excludes for commands. The experience multiplier is ×4. However, the scaling is at party highest level ×1, so you're not going to be able to outscale your enemies. Ability scaling is 2.5 instead of 2, so slightly harder hitting will be the enemies, especially with your party highest level. And the no Ultima flag is set off, meaning you can learn Ultima with Gogo's Seed. And this is the third Ultros of the Seed here. It's Ultros number 3 over on Mark's screen, and he's going to burn it with fire. Alright, so that is Ultros down, and the Kefka Tower skip has been completed. Unfortunately, Mark doesn't really need it, because he's done with his statues now. I'm getting word in the chat that I'm incorrect, that ability scaling gets easier, actually, as the number gets higher. See, I thought that was just how many tiers up the ability scaling went. Was that Fallen 1 that Risopus casted? Oh no. I hate to see it. Well, here's to hoping nobodywar can get past this in a hurry. He's having a little trouble with the slots here. Like I said, 7 flush, you have to try to screw it up. Oh no, and a Grand Train from Risopus. This might be a reset here. Whew. Setzer barely survives, 20 HP in a dream. And here comes the H-Bomb. Could this do it for him? As Mark steps on the switches at 123.15. There it is, the clutch H-Bomb from nobodywar, eking out that fight against Risopus. That's what happens when you get random ability scaling. You get Grand Trains from Piranhas. Who knew that fish could conduct? So, one thing to note is that Final Kefka Battle is not scaled. So all of the things we've been talking about for most of the seed in terms of random enemy scaling and what levels the bosses are does not apply to Final Kefka. Kefka is the same level as it is in vanilla, which is in the 60s. However, our runners always have this battle, so we're well versed in what to do, and one of the first things to do is to take out the long arm there with some instant death. The head is weak to fire, so Merton will actually deal double damage to the head as it does to the balled up fist. And we want to take the head down not last, because if it is last, it'll death counter with Quake. The balled up fist is weak to water, although I don't think we've got water. Usually it's fire skeins or tridents or maybe some lures that have that particular things associated with them. Alright, so that's the head dead, and now all we've got is the one arm left. So, while Mark is using a lot of Merton here, it is 85 MP per cast, as you see, except on Cyan, who's got the economizer. So, hopefully he's got some MP restoring items, otherwise this is going to get out of hand really fast. I just noticed Locke also has an economizer on, so that is what how Mark is going to power through the seed. He's got Locke and Cyan with economizers and Merton set up. Nobody War taking out Ultros there. So he will be able to step on the statues very soon. So this is Tier 2, where there are 4 different parts to this boss. Tools is susceptible to instant death, so we could use that Doom again. The Tiger is weak to ice. The guy pointing all the way on the left-hand side is Magic, who only casts magic, but is hilariously able to be silenced, so that he can't cast any magic. However, I don't think Mark picked up the Esper with Mute. I think Nobody War was the only one that got Mute. And that's 1:26:25 for Nobody War. So that is a difference of 3 minutes and 10 seconds between our runners here. So Mark is going to have a more difficult time here as we get a confused Shadow. And his Dooms are not getting lucky for him either. One thing we want to be careful of, Merton hits everything on the screen, which is nice because it means we kill things faster. However, we don't really want to kill both hit and magic at the same time, because magic can death counter with quarter, and oh my goodness, that's 3 out of 4 for N-Cross. Thankfully, we have Merton, which will be able to thaw out our party immediately right away. The only way to get rid of the freeze status is to hit your party members with fire. And there we go. That's the Doom fight. Rather, that's the instant death on tools. And here comes Nobody War with X-Zone, trying to get rid of that long arm. Unfortunately, X-Zone is considerably more inaccurate than Doom. And so one way to get your party member out of the confused state is to hit him with a stick. A physical attack will break that. However, Shadow just blocked the physical attack, and then he just hit himself. Alright. So Magic's still giving problems here on Mark for Tier 2. It looks like we finally got rid of the long arm for Nobody War. And he better be careful with those jumping things with Cyan's Yeti Smash with the right target there. We do want to take out the head first. And it looks like the head is now down, and we're just down to the fist. Speaking of fist, it is 10 hits time for Mark. So I believe that's his third part of this boss down, and all he has left is magic. So, correction. Tiger seems to still be up based on that. And yikes, that is a zombied Setzer. Thankfully, there is a Revivify in the arsenal there that will get your party to be not zombied again. Unfortunately, Magic casted Life 3 on Tiger, and that's going to revive Tiger for some HP. As nobodywar defeats Tier 2, or Tier 1 rather, and is on to Tier 2. Remember, he has Mute for Magic, and he has Instant Death for tools, but he does not have Merton. So, we'll see how that lets nobodywar catch up here. Merton's also a great healing spell. As Setzer went from kneeling down to standing back up there. So that's Mute on Magic as Cyan keels over and dies on nobodywar's screen. We'll have to get Cyan back up at some point. And it looks like nobodywar has the life spell, so he bought those Phoenix Downs just for some insurance in case he ran out of magic power. And speaking of power, that is Mark powering through Tier 2, which gave him a bit of a headache. That N-Cross freezing 3 of his 4 party members could have been much, much worse had he not had Merton for that. So Tier 3 is 2 different parts. The girl there will absorb all elements and will heal and revive the other part of the boss, so it's best to take her out first. And the other part is Rest, 40,000 HP. We'll cast some nasty spells, and when he gets under 10,000 HP, we'll start casting nastier spells like Meteo and Train, and can counter every single attack with those and take up to 2 attacks per turn. He also will death counter with up to 2 instances of calmness, which is an instant death physical special. So that's why the Golem Esper that we bought from the auction house is so important, because Golem will block those instant death physical specials. Boo trying to cheer on our runners to steal a Ragnarok. You can steal a Ragnarok from sleep there. So girl is down, and here comes the Golem cast. We want to make sure that we cast it with a character with high HP, because Golem will block damage for the amount of the HP's caster. Meanwhile, on nobodywar's screen, it looks like he's got just magic left to deal with. So he'll be joining Mark up in Tier 3 pretty soon. I misspoke. It looks like magic is still kicking. Yeti doing 3,600 damage with that body slam is really nice. So Yeti is not bad for the first 2 tiers, but on Tier 3 and Tier 4, where you have to watch out for counterattacks, it can get a little bit dicey. As we do see Mark employing some weight trick tactics in order to make sure that he is able to throw the last set of spells at sleep. Because remember, under 10,000 HP is when he starts countering with a lot of nasty things. And Mark's offense is mostly Merton. Here comes a Train, which will unfortunately mute all of his characters. And he's going to have to use either a Remedy or an Echo Screen, and Setzer is going to bite the dust from a Condemned. So it looks like he's going to have to recover a little bit here. As out comes the Meteo. So it looks like we're going to get we're going to get Cyan to cast a Merton. Hopefully, no Meteo comes out as Setzer comes back up. He's going to get healed here, but he has a chance to get a counter attack of Meteo. And Shadow's timer is ticking down all the time. However, waiting in menus means that Mark is able to pause that timer, so to speak, as this is what's called wait tricking, where you wait for the enemies to go. Meanwhile, on Nobody War screen, I want to point out him casting Phantom in order to avoid all of the attacks for 10 hits. It makes it go much, much faster. There comes the Calmness out for Mark, and he blocks one, and Golem blocks the other one, so he's now on to Tier 4 of the final battle, as Nobody War scooches into Tier 3. So Final Kefka is a one-part boss, as the name implies. He's got 60 or so thousand HP. He will cast Fallen 1 on the first turn, unless you do more than 30,000 damage to him. When he gets under 30,000 HP, he will start countering with things like Havoc Wing and Hyperdrive, which is the strongest physical and strongest single target magical attack in the game here. When he gets under 10,000 HP, we'll start countering with things like Ultima. However, there is a bit of a reprieve, as he will not counterattack during the phase where he charges up for his ultimate ability called Goner. So that's when we want to hit him with everything he's got. Nobody more meanwhile, with the Phantom cast on, ate a W win, which means his entire party went down to critical levels of HP. He's got the Yeti asleep, which is actually probably more helpful than it is harmful. Pulling out the Super Balls here. As remember, Girl absorbs all elements, so you have to hit her with non-elemental things, which includes Cyan jumping up and down. And maybe a Yeti smash or two. Unfortunately, he was asleep, but the Lagomorph got rid of the sleeping status. On Mark's screen, he did get reduced to 1 HP, but Merton will heal almost all of his party members, so it's not bad, and it deals damage as well. Gonna throw out a potion on Locke, because remember, Locke is one of our 2 economizer casters, so we want to keep him alive. Here comes Golem for Nobody War to set up for his Calmness protection on Tier 3. Remember, earrings were like 30,000 each, so that's why we kind of see... Normally, Merton is a very high, powerful spell, but that's why we see it only doing slightly more than 3k. Is because we don't have those magic power enhancing relics. Crack goes a Thunder Shield, that's a maximum damage Bolt 3 spell. And there it is, Nobody War bypassing Calmness here, and he is set to do battle against Final Kefka as well. Can he catch up? That is the question. Can the Aura Lance Pogo using Cyan help close the gap? Out come the shields now for Mark, which also means that his main source of attack, this Merton, is going to destroy his characters that don't have the red jacket. But there is the Crack Pow! And Mark does finish in first place. His official time is 1:38:03. Get your GGs in chat for him. What a amazingly close race here, folks. Ends up using a bunch of shield cracks in order to get past that one there. Nobody War is at the Fallen 1 state now. Looks like he's also going to take off his shields. You see how much more damage Nobody War was pumping out. That's why he was able to catch up so nicely. And here comes the end beyond chaos. So now is the time to throw everything you got at him. Out comes the Flame Shields. Out comes the Yeti Smash. Up in the air goes Cyan. And this might do it here with this Flame Shield. Boom shakalaka. That is the Nuff Jigglypuff, as it were. 139.15 for nobodywar is his final time. So that race was about a minute difference. So 138.03 to 139.15. Remember, when our runners entered Final Kefka, Mark had a 3-minute and 10-second lead. So nobodywar was able to claw back about 2 of those minutes in Final Kefka. So had nobodywar finished some of those battles just a bit faster, this might have been a bit of a crazy one. And we are joined in the booth by our first place finisher. Congratulations on advancing, Mark. GG.
Hi, thanks.
Yeah, so tell me how you felt about, let's do Setzers flag set in general and then this seed specifically.
So I didn't get a lot of time to practice Setzers flag set. I've watched a lot of people practice it, and it seemed miserable for most people. And my first practice was pretty miserable. This one...
Yep, go ahead. Sorry about that.
Yep, this one was surprisingly not terrible. It felt like I was fumbling around a little bit here and there, and my time wasn't super, but I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah, so let's talk about, sort of what you did, right? Is you went to the Coliseum and you found some stuff to buy. You went through Zone Eater and had the absolutely most trolly Chancellor I've ever seen in a very, very long time. But you were able to claw back with some Merton strats. So you got that online relatively early in the seed. Was that something that you were thinking, okay, this is just going to carry me to the end of the seed?
Yeah, like I did not find very much physical offense. And my squad's magic wasn't anything to talk about, but they had Merton and they had Merton protection, so...
Yep, the only problem was Merton costs a lot to cast. However, you had a solution with some economizers there.
Yeah, double economizer was pretty nice. It felt like I got kind of trolled by bosses that Merton didn't do anything to, but...
Yeah, specifically that Atma spot at the very end of your Kefka Tower climb. Before that, you also had a little trouble with Doomgaze and Phoenix Downs. With a Setzer flag set where consumables may cost a lot. In this case, Phoenix Downs were 35,000 apiece. That's what you were definitely looking for before going to Kefka's Tower, I assume.
Yeah, I was just kind of taking a safety route and just trying to pick up some Phoenix Downs. And I needed a Warp Stone because I was hoping to get the skip after doing the middle route, which didn't pan out.
Yeah, unfortunately, 2 of those 3 bosses were not unique. So that was going to be my other question, is were you banking on getting perhaps a skip with 3 unique bosses up the middle route, and it just didn't pan out for you there?
I was feeling pretty good at that point because I hadn't seen any unique bosses. And I was like, oh, maybe this is just not be a trolley seed, and I just won't. Yeah. And then Flame Eater got us.
Yep. It was rather unfortunate that we had it that way. And then in your final Kefka fight, you entered at 123.15 and you finished at 138. So a little bit of a longer final Kefka, right? That's what, almost 14, nearly 15 minutes actually. Were you starting to feel the final Kefka slog a little bit there with how many times you were casting Merton and trying to figure out what was going on, especially tier 2 not having an answer for magic as well?
Yeah, magic didn't punish me too hard for not having mute. I was mostly unhappy with casting Merton and seeing 3,000 on every character, which I wish that was a little bit higher.
Yeah, I was commenting, normally we have earrings, but in this seed, I think they were also around 31,000 per earring, right?
I did end up picking up the earrings. It's just I had an earring and an economizer, so it was lower, and everybody's magic was low anyway.
Yep. The stat rolls were not there with you. So let me now unmute nobodywar, and let's see if he's around. nobodywar, you there?
Yo.
All right.
What's up?
Well, unfortunately, this means that you are going to be no longer with us in the Coliseum tournament, as this was the lower bracket. But I wanted to just say GG on
It's
your
all
run.
Thank
You
you, sir.
started out Final Kefka 3 minutes and 10 seconds behind Mark, and you only finished 1 minute and 10 seconds behind him as the final Crack Pow did. So you had a bit more, I would say, balanced offense versus just Merton casting, but it was just not enough for you to catch up.
It was right. I'm not sure where I kind of lost a couple minutes.
Definitely in World of Ruin Narsh between
that's right.
the White Dragon and
but I wasn't
the
really
White
worried
Dragon
about
and
that.
Goddess for sure.
Yeah, I wasn't worried about it by that time. It's that was like my initial like grind. I knew like level 7 going up there was dangerous to begin with, and yeah, I don't know. I saw Merton early too on that Esper, and I seen red caps floating around, and I never set it up. I never took Yeti out of the party.
Hey, well, I mean, we didn't, other than Merton, we didn't really have a whole heck of a lot. There was an Atma weapon with an offering, but that's really about it.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything to go with that offering I got out of the Coliseum. My saving grace this seed was that Aura Lance and Horn and Boots I found.
Yeah, doing massive damage.
Yeah, I knew that would carry me. And only one person could equip the Lance, though, so I knew I was going to need to find something else somewhere.
So I want to ask you about the very beginning of your seed, as you went to the auction house first, whereas Mark went to the auction house at the very end. Have you been finding with selling random garbage in your inventory, you get to the 90k for the auction house early, and that's why you went, yeah, let me go auction house early and buy an Esper here?
Yeah, I think it was the steps in my routing, like, you know, if anyone's watched me race before, I don't like do Norse, Returner, South Figaro. I'm like World of Ruin, Allbrook, first town, and then like knowing like the way the flags are in this, like I hopped into Miranda right away because I've found some crazy stuff in the shops, and then Jador's right there, so I just routed in that early auction house play to try to get some kind of, you know, offense early, you know, pre any kind of grinding.
Yeah, I mean, it was a smart play because it also happened to be the Golem Esper, which is very important. I didn't know if Mark was going to find it or not, but as the seed sort of laid itself out, Mark, you almost had to go there. Otherwise, your options were going to the Floating Continent or Phoenix Cave or Kefka at Narsh, I think, for your last Esper.
There's also Mount Zozo.
And Mount Zozo, yeah. So Mount Zozo we didn't see from either one of you.
I don't know about.
Yeah, those are some bad options.
I just want to say, where are all the girls this seed?
Yeah, nowhere to be found. Because Mark, I think you picked up Locke, whereas nobodywar picked up Mog in the Floating Continent. So other than that, your parties were very similar to that. But yeah, so shout out to Rizopus casting Fallen One for you, nobodywar.
No doubt, I was dying.
And when I saw Flame Eater cast Quake on you, Mark, I was like, oh god, I was like, this is a reset here.
Made it through that last fight. Gosh, who was that boss in the tower with 20 HP left?
Yeah, that was the Piranhas.
Clenching on that one too. Oh,
yep.
Was it?
Yeah.
No, there was another one too earlier, I think. Had me on my seat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the world of it. So I made the announcement during the stream, and you guys are going to find out about it now. I'll ask you first, Mark, since you will be playing this flag set next week. Gogo's Mirror is the next round flag set for the Coliseum. The Coliseum reward is auto-reflect. The commands have no random excludes. The experience multiplier is ×4. The scaling is party highest level ×1. So you're not going to be able to outscale the enemies. The ability scaling is 2.5 instead of 2. But we do have access to Ultima in Gogo's Mirror. And of course, we start with Gogo with Mimic. So your initial thoughts on the flag set.
It's going to be another bizarre one, just like this one in Shadow. It's completely different than your regular routing. Auto reflect, I I would love to see someone use. I don't think I will.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it sounds awesome. Oh, you mean I don't get targeted by any spells? And then you realize, wait a minute, I have to cure my party. Wait a minute, I have to dispel this nasty status effect on my party. You know?
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, maybe Reflect isn't as good as I thought it was going to be. You know?
I had a thought you can get auto reflect and then just cast reflect on them, and then you can heal yourself.
Dear Lord, it's like who's on first exercise, right?
No.
So nobody war thoughts on Go-Go.
Yeah, I wouldn't be. I don't know. There's some interesting concepts there, but I don't think with that being the Coliseum reward, it's going to get much play.
Yep. Well, both of you did decide to go to the Coliseum to get the 3 high-tier items. Mark, was that because you felt that Siege just didn't give you anything in terms of offense there?
Tomorrow start, I'm going to go to the Coliseum right away.
Yeah. Same with you, Nobody War.
Oh, yeah.
Yep, totally makes sense. So we'll leave it at that then. Mark, any other final words before we close this thing out here?
No, it was a good race. It seemed like it was pretty close. Nobody wore a good game.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. Good race.
Yeah, thanks, Schwantz, for commentating and Speed Gaming for hosting.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys for, volunteering to run, especially at last notice, right? We had another match in mind that got rescheduled, and I was like, well, usually we are here at 8 o'clock. Let's see if I could make a 10 o'clock slot happen, and Speed Gaming was gracious enough to do that. So, yeah, thank you, Mark, for volunteering as well. Nobody war. Any other final thoughts before we let you go?
No, I'm good. Thank you guys again for everything.
All right, awesome. So yeah, make sure we give our runners a follow. That is Mark and Nobody War. Now that is actually working. Before it wasn't necessarily working, and I was having to spell out your names directly for everybody. So yeah, we do have a weekly slot here on Speed Gaming. It's at 8 o'clock Eastern most of the time. We push this back to have this particular Coliseum match. We're also going to continue to upload Coliseum matches onto our YouTube channel, FF6 Worlds Collide. We're on Twitter at FF6_WC. I believe Nobody War de facto runs the Instagram account at FF6WC. So thank you for your work on that. I love double tapping my phones every once in a while at the cool stuff you post. And yeah, that's, I think, going to do it for us. So thank you, everybody, for coming out and hanging out and watching us. And we'll see you all on the next time. Bye-bye now.